This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, and Kitsu the Kitsune. A few days have passed since the incident on Little Planet, and Sonic and Shadow are back on the hunt for the final Chaos Emerald, though it seems they have finally come across an insurmountable problem, as the only path forward is a stretch of ocean too vast for the pair to cross the old-fashioned way, with Sonic riding on Shadow's back while his air shoes carry them across. This is quite a blow, as no doubt Robotnik will have no such issue passing over the water in his Eggmobile, while at best, they'll have to backtrack to a previous island and see if they can find a more circuitous path across the ocean by hopping from island to island. That is, until Sonic casually suggests they could always take his plane, with Shadow asking since when has the Blue Boy owned a plane? Shrugging casually, Sonic admits that he's kinda always had it, since he inherited years and years ago from an uncle who used to live on this island, though this only elicits a sigh from Shadow, who questions what else he doesn't know about his companion who suddenly has aircrafts and uncles he's never heard about till now. Smirking slightly, Sonic asks if Shadow really wants to hear they're considering his uncle's Robotnik, though shaking his head, the Ultimate Life Form corrects that actually he'd be the Doctor's uncle, since his creator was Ivo's... never mind, where's the plane? Still smirking since he feels like he won this one, Sonic wastes no time leading the other hedgehog to a long-abandoned property, where as promised, a red biplane bearing the name Tornado sits waiting in the hangar. Figuring they're already behind Robotnik, the duo quickly clamber their way aboard, though when Sonic attempts to climb into the pilot's seat, Shadow casually tosses him into the back, grunting that as the only one between them who has ever driven a vehicle before, he's flying. Shrugging this is fine by him since it'll let him stretch his legs more, the blue blower hops onto the wing. Then, when he's comfortable, the pair take off into the vast blue sky. Despite not being quite as fun or fast as running at their top speeds, the two hedgehogs do enjoy the feeling of the sea air as it races past them, with it almost being a shame when Shadow's innate connection to the Chaos Emeralds tells them the last one is on the nearby west side island, forcing them to land. Touching down Emerald Hill, the pair are greeted by an area whose resemblance to Green Hill is even stronger than Palm Tree Panic, and in more ways than just a name, as at a glance it is hard to believe they're not back on South Island. However, this is not all they see, as when they dismount and begin running in the direction Shadow's senses are pulling him, they come across a pair of foxes bullying a younger yellow fox boy by jeering and yanking on his two tails. Having no time or tolerance for bullies, Shadow chaos snaps over to kick one of the tormentors away from the frightened child. While following his partner's lead, Sonic dashes over and painfully plants his foot on the second bully's tail, sardonically asking if this Joker doesn't like people with two tails, then how does he feel about having none? As the hedgehogs had hoped, this sudden display frightens the bullies off. While bending down to check on the kid, Sonic asks if he's okay. Trembling slightly, the yellow fox nods and introduces himself as Tails, while in turn Sonic and Shadow give their own names and ask if he knows anything about a Chaos Emerald. Perking up, Tails nods that while he prefers science and engineering to myth and legend, he does remember an old tale about the civilization who once ruled this island, and how they used a magic gem to attain great power, only for their empire to fall into ruin, and the gods of the island to seal the stone away. Noting that this sounds like their Chaos Emerald, Shadow then turns to leave, though for once Sonic does not follow, instead asking Tails if he thinks he can keep up with them, having evidently already taken a shine to the kid. Seeing this, Shadow grumbles slightly under his breath, as he really needs to have a talk with Sonic about his propensity for picking up strays. Though knowing better than to try and talk his wolf companion out of this now that he's gotten attached, Shadow instead gestures for the younger pair not to fall behind, since they're still in a race against Robotnik. Fortunately, Tails has a rather novel way of keeping pace with the two hedgehogs, as by spinning his twin tails like a propeller, he is able to fly, which comes in handy rather quickly since not long into their journey through Emerald Hill, they come across badniks. As ever, Sonic and Shadow are quick to smash them into pieces, releasing the animals within, though as they share a look in the aftermath of this skirmish, it is clear that they are having the same thought. Not only is the Doctor already here, but he has clearly come in force, meaning he knows the last emerald is here too. Turning to Tails, Shadow questions if his local legends say anything about where this magic gem is hidden away, though shaking his head, the fox boy admits that if it does, he doesn't remember, since all he knows is that it's apparently sealed, so maybe it's in the aquatic ruins, since they were said to have once been a temple constructed by the ancient civilization. Grinning that his little buddy's a genius, Sonic encouragingly asks him to show them the way, with Shadow concurring since at this range his grasp on the Chaos Emerald's location is too vague to say anything more than it's somewhere on the island. In fact, it almost feels like something is intentionally obscuring his connection, which gives credence to the idea that it was sealed away by powerful entities, if they can even override his abilities as the ultimate life form. Hoping that this obscuring effect will at least make Robotnik's job of finding the emerald equally hard, the trio make haste as they now know they have no time to spare. However, this belief is tested almost immediately, when they spot what appears to be the Doctor's Eggmobile, now sporting a pair of large drills on either side, heading into a vast chemical plant that is spewing noxious smoke into the sky. Figuring this couldn't have popped up overnight, Sonic asks how long Robotnik's been squatting here, to which Tails sadly replies that he arrived a few months ago and conquered the island with his massive flying fortress, though one day he left, and this is the first time he's seen him since. Having a good idea what caused the Doctor's sudden departure and return, Sonic and Shadow are struck with an even deeper desire to bust up the chemical plant, an idea Tails does not object to as they make their way inside. Unsurprisingly, this place is absolutely swarming with badniks, including a new model of mechanical spider that drops from the ceiling and grabs its unsuspecting prey, forcing Shadow to more than once spin dash into one of them when Sonic runs ahead and gets grabbed, or else Tails timidly lags too far behind. Nonetheless, this place is nothing they can't handle, though a few times they are submerged in deep pools of toxic waste when the factory's intruder detection system tries to drown them, forcing them to rapidly climb, or also briefly separated when one of them falls down a spike pit, leading to Tails showing off his own hidden strength as he dives after them and carries them back to safety through his power of flight. Unfortunately, these small detours do come at a cost, as when they reach the end of the chemical plant, there is no sign of Robotnik, and when Tails points out that it connects directly to the aquatic ruins, that makes things significantly worse. Taking point in spite of his connection to the emerald not being any clearer, Shadow leads the boys into the forest surrounding the ruins, with the foliage quickly giving way to a series of ancient-looking structures, somewhat resembling aqueducts, with Shadow presuming the emerald must be hidden somewhere here. However, as it turns out, the hardest part of this investigation will not be the act of searching, but instead getting Sonic to come along, as this area frequently requires them to either run underneath waterfalls that drop cold water upon them, or else descend into deep pools. Sardonically, Shadow tells the blue brat to think of this as his bath after getting his fur soaked in all those chemicals, though when it becomes clear how much Sonic does not enjoy these dousings, he adapts, suggesting that the boys should go together and search the upper levels of this place where less water will fall on them, or at least will fall with less force, while he'll take the low road scouring the pools. Seeing the sense in splitting up to cover more ground, Sonic and Tails promise not to let the black and red hedgehog down, with Shadow allowing himself a faint proud smile when Sonic takes the lead and guides the flying fox to a higher point to begin their search, as in spite of his childishness, it's clear his young companion has come into his own these last few weeks, and now that he's stepped into a big brotherly role with Tails, his growth is evident. In fact, a part of Shadow wonders whether Sonic really needs his guidance any longer, though now is not the time for such thoughts. Pushing this out of his mind, Shadow gets to work, while above him, Sonic and Tails do likewise, though as the hours pass, they find no sign of the emerald, nor does the ultimate life form feel anything to suggest it is even close by. Finally, when night falls, they are forced to accept that maybe it isn't in these ruins after all, so that as they reconvene, Tails admits there is one other place he can think of where the emerald might be, though it's a bit of a long shot compared to here, an old mine called Mystic Cave, since it's been around as long as anyone can remember, so maybe it was made during the time of that ancient civilization. Sighing that it's the best lead they have, Shadow bids the fox to lay on, though there's one small problem. To reach the ancient mine, they must first pass through a city-sized casino that has used the cover of darkness to descend into a den of vice, forcing Shadow to take both boys' hands and Chaos control all three of them out of there, since as the adult of the group, it's his job to keep these two from gambling away their other Chaos Emeralds, or being suckered into some really shady business by the bright lights and exciting sounds. Thankfully, this also allows him to skip right to the entrance to Mystic Cave, with Sonic questioning why they didn't just do that from the start, though Shadow confesses he doesn't have much experience transporting another person with him when he uses Chaos Control. Going a little pale, Tails rhetorically asks if he even wants to know how improbable his survival just now was, though concluding he doesn't, the Fox Boy decides to shut up and lead the other two down the mine shaft and into the cave. At once, Shadow feels something, a pull in his core that tells him the emerald is here, and upon articulating this to the younger pair, Tails calls this remarkable, theorizing the subterranean nature of the hiding place must have been what stopped Mr. Shadow from finding it sooner, because the stone and dirt was acting as a natural buffer. Truly remarkable. Nodding along in a way that shows he's more interested in finding the emerald than sitting around talking about the magic blocking powers of dirt, the blue blur asks his companion which way the gem is, and pointing down, Shadow states that it feels like it's deeper in, way at the bottom of this mine. Putting their faith in Shadow's senses, the two boys fall in behind the black and red hedgehog as he leads the way, with it quickly becoming clear this mine is not what it seems, as despite the appearance of being a regular tunnel, there are plenty of puzzles, such as pulleys disguised as ivy needed to open gates and descend deeper. Despite these slowing him down, Shadow can't help but feel a sense of appreciation for the care being taken here to protect the emerald, as this feels like the sort of place Professor Gerald would have spent weeks lovingly studying, since since he always did enjoy legends and archaeology, even if they weren't his primary fields of research. With this thought comes a memory, one he has not revisited in almost 50 years, of an evening on the Ark, when Professor Gerald had told him and Maria of an island in the sky that he had visited as part of his research during the early days of Project Shadow, and how a mural bearing the image of a heroic hedgehog confronting a great evil had inspired him to design Shadow the way he did. At the time, Maria had thought he was just making it up as part of a bedtime story, but now, Shadow isn't so sure, since while he has never seen a floating island before, he has seen enough strange things during his time on Earth that he is unwilling to discount any possibility. However, before he can dwell more deeply on the past, the present demands his attention once more, as he finds himself overlooking a spiked pit, much like the ones from Chemical Plant. Curiously, Sonic asks his companion what's up, with Shadow admitting he can feel the Chaos Emerald directly below him, and that something tells him he's meant to let himself fall down this pit. In a startled tone, Tails protests that he will be skewered if he does, but shaking his head, Shadow replies that he can feel this is the right decision. Though when Sonic grins that he'll follow the other hedgehog's lead, Shadow's jaw tightens, as he flatly states that Sonic will do no such thing. He needs him to stay here with Tails while he goes down alone, since if he's wrong, then only one of them gets hurt, and the boys can pull him up, and if he's right, then the younger pair can be his beacon home, since he'll be able to use Sonic's Chaos Emeralds as an anchor point to teleport back to when he's done. Knowing there's no point arguing with the stubborn old hedgehog when his mind's made up, Sonic simply tells him to look after himself down there. Though, when the two of them lock eyes, Shadow can see that his young partner is worried, and so laying his hand on Sonic's shoulder, he assures him that he'll be back soon, and it'll be with their final emerald. Then, without another word, he leans backwards and allows himself to plummet into the hole. Worriedly, Sonic and Tails rush to the edge to see if their friend is okay, though shockingly, they see no sign of him, as if he simply passed through the spikes and vanished. Meanwhile, deeper down, Shadow continues to fall, having learned that the spikes were simply an illusion, before finally touching down in what appears to be some sort of hidden palace beneath Mystic Cave. Even at a glance, he has reason to believe he is in the right place, as much of the floor and bridges are made of what appears to be regular emeralds, while to get to higher ground, he must smash what appears to be large replicas of the green Chaos Emerald in order to uncover springboards that he can use to launch himself upwards. Making his way deeper in, Shadow quickly comes to suspect that he's the only one here, as the entire palace seems to be deserted, or at least that is what he thinks until he comes across a stray badnik. From the looks of things, it is not here on purpose, but instead must have fallen down the same hole as him and not yet figured out a way to get back to its brethren in the mine. Unluckily for it, it never will, as the ultimate life form wastes no time smashing it before it can cause any trouble, with this being the only encounter he has until he reaches the end. Here he finds a massive intricate pipe organ made largely out of the same emeralds he's been seeing throughout, while resting on the keys is the green Chaos Emerald. Reaching out eagerly, Shadow prepares to take it and return to Sonic and Tails, though before he can, a rumbling from above makes him jump back. Looking up, he is annoyed but not entirely surprised to see Robotnik, with it now being clear what the drill attachments on his Eggmobile were for, as he descends through the ceiling with a sinister smirk on his pudgy face. This act of needless, lazy desecration makes Shadow's blood boil, and stands as further proof how unlike his grandfather this man is, though when he attempts to growl out a rebuke of the Doctor, he is silenced as Robotnik reveals and blows into another new modification to his bubble car, a giant brass instrument whose sound is enough to shake the cavern and cause chunks of ceiling to fall upon them. Thinking fast, Shadow Chaos snaps his way around these to avoid being crushed, though this momentary distraction is all the mustachioed madman needs to make a dive for the emerald, grabbing it up and preparing to make his escape. Snarling fiercely as he's not about to have this fool interfere with his plans, Shadow readies another Chaos Snap in the direction of the Eggmobile. Though having fought Shadow enough times by now to predict this plan, Robotnik acts first, blowing hard into his instrument once again. While one brass blast was enough to shake the ceiling, two prove enough to cave it in entirely, catching the ultimate life form off guard as he is struck by a deluge of stone and emerald that threatens to bury him alive. All the while, the Doctor cackles maniacally, so that the last thing Shadow sees before darkness claims him is the sight of Robotnik flying away triumphantly, emerald safely in hand. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.